how do spacecrafts work and rockets, things like that? I mean, even electricity and the fact that you're watching what you're watching on a phone or computer, what are the principles that guide all of these? Well, science, mathematics, and technology. And as we stand today, it seems like there are certain countries that do way better in math and science than others. One of such countries is Singapore. Singapore has done so well in math that we actually have a curriculum called Singapore Math, which is literally the curriculum that is used in the country of Singapore. If you look at the statistics for the best countries in math and science in the world, here's what you'll find. Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, China, consistently, and Hong Kong. Now, why are these countries doing better, and how can you help your child to perform just as well or better than students in those countries? Because the statistics show that in America, about 50% of students drop out of engineering school or switch out of engineering altogether, right? Why? What's going on? And the students in Singapore, if they end up in our engineering schools, are they going to drop out at the same rate? The answer is no. So let's see how they train their students, and I'll show you some of the books that they use, and then you can see how we are going to expand upon what they're doing there. We're going to bring it here to America. So let's start with the books that you're familiar with. Singapore Math. This is a curriculum that you might have seen along the way, especially if you're homeschooled. So this is called Singapore Math, right? Pretty straightforward. There's a workbook 4A and 4B, and then there's a textbook 4A and 4B. There's a parent's guide, educator guide, and so on. Okay, no problem. But this is this is ordered in America, okay? So Singapore Math. Watch what's gonna happen. We're gonna go from the American edition of Singapore Math. This is their, they have it all the way to 6th grade. And then we're going to actually look at Singapore Math from Singapore. This is Singapore Math from the country of Singapore today. A friend of mine just came in and he's helping me run my STEM camps from Singapore. And this is what we see. We see that their curriculum is pretty much the same setup as ours in the 4th grade, right? The Singapore Math in America is the same as the Singapore Math from Singapore from 1st grade to 6th grade especially. No problem. We see how they set up their math. No problem at all. But what about 7th to 12th grade? There's a lot of families out there that sometimes want Singapore Math for their 7th to 12th graders, but they only can get the Singapore Math till 6th grade. Well, good news. Officially starting today, you can order 7th to 12th grade Singapore Math. Email amosthemathguy@gmail.com. Email amosthemathguy@gmail.com, and I can get you Singapore Math for the fall for 7th to 12th grade. So what does Singapore do for their 7th to 12th graders? Let's talk about it. So they do the regular elementary school all the way to 6th grade, and then 7th through 10th grade is actually, they call it their 4 years of learning, right? So it's year 1, 2, 3, and 4. So their year 4 students are the equivalent of our 10th grade students. So imagine our 10th grade students right now. Our 10th grade students take Algebra 2 or Geometry. That would be in a state of like Minnesota, or a state that has a higher bar. What do I mean by a higher bar? Because if you do Algebra 2 in 10th grade, pre-algebra in 11th grade, and calculus in 12th grade. But guess what? In Singapore, what do they do in 10th grade? Let's talk about what they do. This is the 10th grade textbook in Singapore. This is what they use. It's called Think Mathematics. New Syllabus Mathematics, 8th edition, okay? What they do in 10th grade, let's open to their table of contents. What they do is they start out by teaching students about set notation, probability, matrices, and statistical data analysis. That's pretty standard Algebra 2. No problem at all. They have a second book that they use in 10th grade. Let's open and see what they teach these 10th graders. So they teach the 10th graders, 1 second here. Okay, so they teach them vectors in 2 dimensions. They teach them properties, they actually equations and inequalities, algebraic manipulation, angles, triangles, and polygons, and they do probability and statistics. What you notice is they have a little bit of geometry and a little bit of algebra 2 in their 10th grade. This is called year 4. That's why it's called 4B and 4A. But here is where things get pretty interesting. Also in 10th grade, students take additional mathematics 1 and 2, A and B. They have another set. They don't do this in 10th grade and this in 11th. No. They do these at the same time. That's what Nigeria also does, which, okay, look at the statistic about the dropouts in engineering. You won't see that for Nigerian students either, or Indian students, or Singaporean students, right? Why? Because the foundation, and I forgot to tell you the reason why 50% drop out and what the research shows. And what it shows is that there is a gap between the K-12 training and the university expectation. So there's a problem along the way when the students are going from elementary, middle school, high school to college, for those who go into engineering in America. But not so much for Nigeria or Singapore or China or Japan. Why? A few things. Number one, the school year in South Korea is about 60 to 70 days longer than the school year in America. Not only is it longer number of days, but then even each of the days have a longer set of hours. Now, I do not think that we need to keep students in school from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's not my view. But I definitely don't think that we need to take 3 months off continuously either. And we know about the summer slide. We're fully aware of the problem. But what are we going to do about the problem? We know about the problem and we're literally just going to move on like everything's going to be okay. That would be true if America was somehow isolated, living off in another planet, and all it was America. But it's a global landscape we're dealing with. People are going to apply for jobs and be competing with someone from Singapore, Nigeria, Japan, and so on, which means that we will have a lot of people who miss out on opportunities because their math and science skills are not strong enough to get them to where they're trying to go. So how do we solve this problem? We bring the 7th to 12th grade Singapore program and we literally bring them into America and use them as a supplement to your child's education, and it guarantees your child's math and science proficiency and excellence. That's what it does, because they're going to be learning at the same level as the best country in math and science. Now, what is the advantage that Singapore has over China and so on as it relates to America? They speak English. So we have their books in English, and their books remind me exactly of Nigeria. So what are the 10th graders in Singapore doing? This is crazy. Not only are they doing Algebra 2 and Geometry, which we talked about earlier, but listen to the other topics that the kids in Singapore are doing. They're doing polynomials and partial fractions, which is pre-calculus. They're doing binomial theorem, which is pre-calculus, equation of a circle, trigonometric functions, trigonometric identities and equations. So they're doing geometry, pre-calc, and algebra 2 at the same time. But this is where it gets crazy. They're doing calculus. This is 10th grade. In 10th grade in Singapore, students are doing differentiation, integration, maximum and minima. They're doing physics. They're doing integration and integrals in 10th grade. In 10th grade in Singapore, they're doing things that 12th graders in America don't even do sometimes. That's where the problem lies. Our bar is lower. And here's the thing. I'm going to show you how to do this well. Okay? I'm going to even tell you how to do better than Singapore. That's part of what I'm going to show in this video. So, they do physics and chemistry, which we did together in Nigeria. And I highly recommend that. Let's go down one more set of books. They do science in 4th grade. This is the textbook. And then in 5th grade, they do systems and energy. Notice they have Einstein's picture in some of these. They're getting the kids to think about people like Einstein, right? Well, if you're going to fly a rocket or a rocket with a spacecraft, right, you need to understand space mathematics. So now here's what I want to do. How do we outperform Singapore while also having sleep and make sure that we're flourishing in all areas of life? Here's how we do it. We teach the applications. We tell children that the math and science they're learning has use in flying rockets. And I apologize here, the light is quite bright here, but I'm going to read you off the table of contents. If you want to fly a rocket, you need to know about algebra. You need to know about geometry. You need to know about probability and statistics. You need to know about logarithms and exponential functions. You need to know matrices and trigonometry, conic sections and calculus. So basically, the Singaporean students in 10th grade, they're getting tools for space mathematics. We need to do the same for our American students. We're going to NASA this summer, God willing, and by God's grace, the plan is to keep that. Every summer, let's explore NASA. Let's explore Cape Canaveral as well, looking at rockets launch, right? So, how can we do what Singapore is doing, and how do we make sure that you have a life in the process? Number one, you need to read Peak. How all of us can achieve extraordinary things. This book talks about deliberate practice. With deliberate practice, we can do what Singapore is doing and actually do it with less energy, so to speak. Number two, learn like a pro. This author also wrote the book How to Learn. This is from Dr. Barbara Oakley and Olive Shui. They've written a book called Learn Like a Pro. So you have two good resources here. You also need to understand that the low bar in education has been around for a long time. The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. So We need to integrate books that teach the history and philosophy of science. And not only, well, and then this one is just called Choose to Win and Scientists of Faith. These are just inspiring stories. But why do we need to do all these? Because then we have context for what we're learning, which Singapore doesn't have. And that's part of how we get ahead. Subscribe for more videos and have a blessed day.